Welcome to In Conversation with Lazarus Carpenter, a podcast introducing authors, poets, and magical creators, sharing their lives, achievements, hopes, and ambitions across cyberspace. This week, special guest from Wales, UK, writer and author of the Glyndŵr series and other books, Catrin Collier.
So good evening and welcome to our author spotlight this week. And it's with great pleasure that I have joining me Catrin Collier, who currently lives in Swansea, but was born in Pontypool. Yes?
Pontypridd.
Pontypridd, sorry, yes, but why did I say? I've got Pontypridd written down as well. And I must apologise for my Yorkshireness as far as my Welsh pronunciations are concerned, even though I have lived here for 30 years.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome, Catrin. You're more than welcome. You have been writing, I think, all your life, yes?
Yes. In fact, it goes back to when I was in the nursery in Masacoed Primary School. I remember being punished for writing a short story about pigs falling down a well instead of practicing my joined up writing. So
I bet that was a good story, though. Have you still got it?
No, I hadn't actually. But I remember getting the teacher was quite agitated actually because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to, which is the story of my life in school.
I think join the club on that one, definitely. So you were born in Pontypridd and went to school in Pontypridd. How old were you when you started actually writing? How old were you when you published your first book?
I published the first book that was picked up was 1989. But I'd been writing before then. It sounds completely ridiculous, but it never occurred to me to try and sell my work. I just used to write. Even in college, I wrote a novel. And I just used to stockpile it. And then one day in the Evening Post in Swansea, there was a little footnote on a column that somebody had won a prize for Swansea Writers' Circle. And I thought, people actually join a circle and they write. And I went along to a meeting and it changed my life completely because people were telling me I had to write for markets and all sorts of other things. But I really hit gold. There were over 80 published members at the time, and the very first talk I heard was Alex Cordell. So, all of a sudden I was catapulted in amongst real writers.
What a wonderful way to get into it, though. Not like nowadays. I mean, people really have to struggle to get anywhere nowadays. I mean, that's a really nice story because it's a very spontaneous growth, isn't it, as well? So, because I mean, it is fair to say you are prolific, and it is fair to say that your genre is mainly historical, isn't it? And I mean, having looked at some of the books that you've written, I mean, your series that you wrote, Hearts of Gold. Was that published well after you'd written it? Was it?
No, that was the first commission I had from Random House.
Right.
The first book I actually had published was a crime book. And that was called Without Trace, and Random House published the hardback and Horror Headline published the paperback and gave me a contract to do another 3. Hearts of Gold was a commission because I spent probably the best part of 10 years writing and researching in between working a book on Iraq in the First World War, which came about because I met a survivor of the war and I didn't know anything about the war in Mesopotamia during the First World War. And I found his stories absolutely fascinating. And I wrote it and sent it to my agent, who also liked it, sent it to my editor in Random House. And what came back was Women Can't Write Military History.
Oh.
But if you move it to Wales in the 30s, we would love to consider it. Well, there's no Arabs, no war, nothing else in Wales in the 30s. But I thought about it. I was being actually offered a commission just on the strength of one crime book. So I went away and did some research, and Hearts of Gold was only ever meant to be a one-off book. But I actually got to a publishing party and met Michael Caine, who had just published. Not a lot of people know that at the same time.
That's really quite an astounding story. How did it make you feel? Can you remember how it made you feel at the time?
It was just a whirlwind. It really was. I'd sort of gone from kicking the door for years and years to finally having the door opened and saying, come on in.
I mean, there are many doors that have been opened to you as well, because one of your books, I believe, was made into a film as well, wasn't it?
Two of them, actually.
Two.
Hearts of Gold was one, and another one was By Any Name.
Was By Any Name a documentary type thing, was it? Or was it an actual book?
No, it's based on a crime book that I wrote within 3 weeks. I just had the idea, and it sounds crazy, but I didn't know what the end was going to be, so I was writing like mad to try and get to the end. But it's about a man who is found running down a motorway covered in blood. And the blood isn't his, but he has no idea who he is or where he's been. And all he knows is a lot of people are after him and wanting to kill him. So he actually takes a doctor hostage and goes on the run. And that was turned into a film.
That sounds fascinating. I have to get a reference of you without relate. Well, why don't you share the reference with the listeners? Where can people see that?
It's available on Amazon, and it was filmed by a very small Welsh company called Tanabe in Swansea.
Swansea company, yes.
Yeah, and somebody who worked for it, Samira, had seen the publicity for The Long Road to Baghdad, which is a book I wrote about Iraq. And she's an actress, and she was really keen on playing a part in it. But I pointed out when I actually met her and her business partner that it was very difficult to film that. You would want at least one army, the Turkish army, and even if they changed costumes, you needed Germans and you needed the British army as well. So unless you have about a spare 4 or 5 million, I think you could forget it.
I was going to say, it's a mega cast, isn't it?
It would be. And her business partner said, look, I haven't got the money or the budget for anything big. And I'd just been giving a talk to a women's group, and I went into the car and I gave him a copy of By Any Name and said, this is a two-hander, you can shoot it in Wales. And 3 weeks later we were on set.
It's amazing, isn't it, that when it's very small budget, it can get done very quickly nowadays. I know that with my Crack Finance series, I pitched it for a film in the States, and I had excellent reviews. But they said the only thing that actually will get in the way of this is the cast would be too huge, battle scenes and all that sort of thing, you know, which may or may not be a problem for Glyndŵr. Oh, please tell us about Glyndŵr, because as you know, I'm a big fan of Glyndŵr, and when I found your books, I mean, I've got everything that's ever been written about him, and I devoured them from beginning to end, all 4 volumes, and thoroughly enjoyed them. I like your style of writing, because you write as I tell my creative writing group they need to do, which is visually, you know. I mean, it leaps, the imagery and the conversations and everything leap off the page. Well, it certainly did to me anyway. And it's had some very good reviews. What brought you to doing that?
A meeting with the same film director who'd filmed By Any Name. By Any Name had come out, and Amazon bought it, and to all intents and purposes, it was a great success. But he has been fascinated by Glyndŵr for years. So he invited me to lunch, and then he said, how do you feel about writing a book about Glyndŵr? initially, I think he said, "How do you feel about writing a script for Glyndŵr?" Because I'd scripted by any name. And I said no, because my study is littered with scripts that have never been made. You know, it's such a long road and so many fall through. So I told him what I would do is write a novel about Glyndŵr. I didn't know very much about Glyndŵr. My father's name was Glyndŵr. And his father was from Anglesey. And they are North Walians back. When I did a DNA test, 50% of me is Wales, going back back to the Middle Ages. And what was interesting is that side of the family, the first son was always called Glyndŵr Jones. My father was Harry Glyndŵr Jones. He was a second son. And his father was also Harry Glyndŵr Jones. So the Glyndŵr had gone through. When I went to Anglesey, I actually saw the Glyndŵr and all the tombstones, and it goes back generations. I thought, I really don't know anything about him, and I wasn't quite sure how to start. So I thought I'd start with all the documents that could be verified. And what I increasingly found was an awful lot had disappeared. There is no detailed document covering the siege of Harlech Castle. There's no documentary evidence as to what really happened to him. There's no evidence of what really happened to his wife. And we know his daughter and his son died in the Tower of London, but we don't know whether she died with them. So I was left with a lot of questions, and then I sat down and tried to think about it logically, and I filled in some of the gaps with what I think happened. But as far as possible, that is fairly factual. I found a great deal of information amongst the Mortimer papers, which I don't think some people who've written about Glyndŵr have gone
Have looked at, no.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that the authorities at the time just wanted to play it down. They wanted Glyndŵr to go into the mist and never ever reappear. And he came so close. He really did. If he, Mortimer, and Hotspur's uncle had got together, they would have, well, Britain would be very, very different.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that score. I mean, his end, I mean, when you consider that he was well into his 50s, wasn't he, when he was proclaimed prince, and still went on for, as far as we know anyway, for another 15 years, you know, been living in caves and goodness knows what, to avoid capture by the... Sorry?
I doubt the caves. I think
well, you know what I mean. But yeah, I mean, that's what legend tells us, isn't it? You know. But you're quite right. There are massive holes in Welsh history associated with the rebellion in terms of evidential proof, etc. So, which is very nice for those of us who like to write and make things up as we go along, which is certainly what I do.
Yeah, it's I found it difficult. You know, I had flights of fancy, and I tried to keep as close to what I think really happened, particularly towards the end. But looking at it, I think he just decided to disappear. He left Wales with a legend. He left Wales with the hope that he would reappear and that it would continue. So
do you think he was Jack of Kent?
No.
No, neither do I. Neither do I. But it would have been a nice thought, well, especially for those people anyway. But no, yes, I mean, there's no. I was saying to when I was pitching Crack Finnan, I was saying to the producers that there has never been a really good movie made about Glyndŵr, either be it sort of mythical or factual, other than the BBC documentary, which wasn't very good at all. And they actually said to me that the market is ripe, really, for something like the Glyndŵr story, A, because it's never been done before, and B, because it's very much a real life Game of Thrones. and lends itself to big budget movies. So I really, really hope and pray that you get there with it, because Wales needs a good movie about Glyndŵr, and your books, your series of books, certainly, my opinion anyway, form a really good template for that. Very good template for it.
Thank you. That's really kind of you to say. But a lot of the Glyndŵr was rooted very much with the director, who absolutely worships Glyndŵr.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just looking at what he achieved. I mean, he took Harlech Castle. He made it his headquarters. He moved his family in there. And at one time, the whole of Wales was ruled by him, virtually.
I mean, the things, I wonder if it would have been a very different story if they hadn't ripped him off. When after Richard was killed, I mean, a lot of the promises that had been made, that were made to him, were broken, weren't they? And I wonder if those, I mean, I can't help but wonder if those promises had been kept, if a lot of what happened did actually happen. Although at the time, as we both know, Wales was very much under the boot of the English in everything. Really, weren't allowed to do anything, were they? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. They did their damnedest just to stamp out the language.
Yeah,
the bards, everything. You know, the fact that Welsh people could be attacked and killed by English people, and there wouldn't even be any kind of inquiry into it.
So not too different from what Donald Trump's suggesting at the moment, is it really? But anyway, we won't go down that avenue. So, no, Catrin, what's next for you?
Well, when I was asked if I would write about Glyndŵr, I was halfway through a book, and this book is not my story. It is a very close friend's story, but it's a story very close to my heart. It's about a friend of mine that I met in the writer's circle, and she was a good 50 or 60 years older than me. Sometimes friendship jumps across age gaps, and it became very close. And I found out that she worked in the Berlin embassy as a diplomat in the 1930s. And she was asked to befriend quite a high-ranking German officer. And I think they expected her to spy. And he went along with it because the Germans were very pleased that he found himself this lovely English friend. The only trouble is the two of them fell in love.
Ah, it's a thorn.
So, yeah, it was. But it is an incredible story. And she told me the story, and I promised her. She tried to get it published in her lifetime. But looking back, and I'm probably going back to when I first joined the circle, it would be the 70s or the 80s. Every time she wrote about the Second World War, she'd get a rejection. Very well written, beautifully written, but no, nobody wants to know about this. So I told her that if ever the time was right, I would write it for her. So that's what I'm doing at the moment.
That sounds like a very worthwhile project, and one that will, again, possibly get you some film rights, because that's a fascinating story and topical.
Well, the book that I wrote that sold absolutely everywhere internationally is called One Last Summer, and it's based on the war diaries my grandmother and my mother kept during the Second World War, because my mother was Prussian, which is a country that no longer exists.
That's right.
And fortunately, some of the family, not all of it by any means, but a few people did manage to survive the Russian invasion. And a short while ago, I think last year, probably, time is going so quickly, I was invited back to Poland to the house, the dream house that my grandfather had built for the family, to make a recording. And it was a documentary that a Polish filmmaker made about the invasion of Poland and East Prussia by the Russians, and it was called Liberation Russian Style. So that is on television. I believe it's on Polish television now.
Is there any chance that might end up on English television with translations, or even on Netflix nowadays? Of course.
Yeah, it will. He's Raffle, the director, is quite a well-known director, and he's made quite a lot of documentaries. The one I particularly like is about the Polish general who, when war was declared, actually took his tank regiment to Italy, where they left their tanks, and he managed to get them on boats, and they came and volunteered to fight for the British.
Fascinating agenda, isn't it, really?
It is, when you look how things happen. And I never quite know what to do, because I got a call from him in the middle of COVID, and he'd read one last summer, and he said, I'd really love to film it. Have you got any money? I said, no. I don't ever had enough money for a film company.
There's no doubt whatsoever that it sounds as if there's still an awful lot more to come from you, Catrin. A lot more. So. Where can our listeners get your books from? Obviously, Amazon. And your website.
Yep, my website has got links not only to where you can buy my books, but it's got links to all the photographs I use in the research and various interviews I've done with people. There are an awful lot of books. I didn't quite realize it, I think, until a couple of weeks ago when somebody wanted a count on them. But
there's 40 odd, isn't there?
Oh, there's more than that.
Is there? I think I lost count after 40. Or I can't remember. I actually did do a count, and I know there was 40 odd. But that's as far as I got anyway. But so, what's your website address, Catrin?
It's www.catrincollier.co.uk.
Lovely. So our listeners can track everything there, and if they wanted to chat to you or contact you, they can do that through your website, of course.
Yes. My email is catrincollier@AOL. No, there's a business in it. Yeah.
Everything's got a .com on it nowadays, doesn't it? If it's got a .com on, you don't live anywhere. You don't exist.
AOL.com. Yes.
Catrin Collier, it has been an absolute delight to speak to you this evening and share your life with our and your work, your phenomenal work with our listeners. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're more than welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to In Conversation with Lazarus Carpenter, a visual symphony of conversation unfolds.
The truth lies in bold questions, a glimpse into deep insight.
Let our journey provoke your thoughts.
Experience the depth and variety of our discussion. Subscribe now to join the conversation.